All right, so just continuing on with our answer for part B, and just before I move on to liquidity, there is just something I left out of the gearing section, something I'd probably always put into gearing, and particularly in this question, because this question is asking us to answer from the point of view of a debenture holder, and that is just the debentures will always have a year after them, and that's when they're due to be repaid. So we have 300,000 euro debentures with a date of 2024. So this is 2017. So these debentures are going to need to be repaid in 300,000 in 2024. So I would just make a general point that the company needs to start building up money to repay them, and what money is currently there. So the big one I'd focus in on is the investments. So you'll see that they're there for 200,000, but their market value now is 150,000. We'll return to that in the investment policy section or security section in a second. But for now, I would just make the point that debentures are due for repayment in 2024. There are investments with a market value of 150,000, which could be used to repay them in part. But the company needs to start building up funds to repay the other 150,000 euros. So it's 300,000 to repay, 150,000 there as investments we could sell. So there's another 150 that needs to be raised. So I think gearing is the best place for that. Now, next section is liquidity. So the liquidity, we have the quick ratio, which is 1.3 to 1 last year, and that was one of the things we calculated, and we got that it was 0.88 to 1. So there's two things there. One, it's getting worse, and two, that acid test or quick ratio has an ideal of 1 to 1. So we're falling short of that as well. Okay, so the quick ratio has disimproved or got worse from 1.3 to 1 last year to 0.88 to 1 this year. This is also below the ideal ratio. Below the ideal, maybe not the right word there, but I target ratio of 1 to 1, or what you shouldn't fall below. This is all below the ideal ratio of 1 to 1. Suggesting the company has a potential liquidity problem. What does this mean? Liquidity problem and will not be able to pay its debts as they fall due. The company has 88 cents of liquid assets to pay each euro of current liabilities or short-term liabilities or short-term debts. Alright, so that's your liquidity. Again, I've kind of switched from bullet points to paragraphs, but you kind of see the points I'm making here. Again, you could kind of see the mirror image of that question. If it was a question where there was a positive, that it was improving from one year to the next, it's above the ideal ratio, it doesn't have a liquidity problem, it can pay its debts as they fall due, and just what it means as well. Okay, so next is investment policy or security. So this is about debenture holders, so I'm going to focus in on security here, but I'm going to bring in investment policy a little bit, and I'll just cover off how you'd answer an investment policy question as well. So as I said, I'm going to focus in on security, and at the heart of security is 300,000 euro in debentures. What happens if the company kind of can't repay the interest, and we need to, or can't repay those debentures, and we need the company to maybe sell an asset to repay us? Okay, so that's what security is all about. Okay, so does the company have assets it can sell to repay us if the worst comes to the worst and they don't have the actual cash or funds to repay us? Okay, so security, the company has 300,000 in debentures and 650,000 in, we'll just focus in on the actual fixed assets first. So that would suggest there is enough security there, suggesting adequate security. You should just double check that those fixed assets are being depreciated correctly. So, you know, they could be sitting there at 650 on the balance sheet, but what if the company hasn't been depreciating them enough or something like that, and they're actually, you know, they're only worth 100,000 or something? Well, then they're no use to us because it's 300,000 of a debt that we need them to repay. So we're doing this. So what is it? Indicate whether debenture holders will be satisfied. So debenture holders should inquire if the assets have been depreciated appropriately 650 is their true value. Okay. The other thing I would say here is there are investments as well. So just it's 200,000 is what they paid for them, 150 is what they're worth. So there are investments with a market value of 150,000, which could be used to repay debentures. I suppose we made that point in gearing already, but it was in gearing, it's from the point of view of it was a normal course of business. The debentures will have to be repaid. In the security section, we're looking at it from a kind of worst case scenario point of view. What if we have to foreclose on these and they're not repaying them. So kind of so kind of make the point in both sections. I would then make the point that, well, the market value is 150. They did cost 200,000, so our investment with the market value of 150, which could be used for ventures. It is concerning that these debentures cost 200k and have declined in value. So 200,000 to 150 over 2, that's a quarter. So a decline in the value by 25%. So 200 down to 150, a decrease of 50 coming from 200 is 25%. So this suggests poor management of resources and investment decisions by the company. Okay, so as part of that security question, I did kind of bring the investment policy in. If this question was about shareholders, you could include the securities stuff as well. I guess that shareholders would be interested in whether or not they have security to repay their debts, but I would focus in definitely on the investment half for a shareholders question. So that absolutely has to be there for a shareholders question. That absolutely has to be there for a debentures question. But like I said, I think it's a good idea to bring that in for a debentures question as well, especially as it kind of does very much tie in the investments because they can be used to repay the debentures. I just have two sections to finish off here: debentures, dividends and share price, and I will just finish those off in one last video.